All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us for Insider Insights on the white collar job market. We're going to delve into the white collar job market's future for Q4 of 2024, using historical economic data from past election years and real time insights from the presenter's private clients and recruitment firm. This session will provide a comprehensive analysis of market trends and predictions. We're going to discover how political and economic factors influence job opportunities and get ahead with actionable strategies to navigate this evolving landscape. We're going to gain valuable perspectives to stay competitive and informed. And this is all led today by Tegan Bartos, who's an award-winning resume writer and certified career coach. She serves as a job search and careers subject matter expert for the National Resume Writers Association, JobScan, and LinkedIn, which led to her, quote, top career expert to follow, unquote, recognition on LinkedIn. Tegan has served over 3,500 ambitious professionals throughout her career as a recruiter, workforce development leader for the Department of Labor agencies, and in her current role as managing director of Jolt Your Careers and JYC Recruiting. I again want to thank the Friends of the Library for their sponsorship. So all 65 of us who are watching live and the many more that will watch the recording, let's give a big virtual round of applause to Tegan for joining us here today. And Tegan, you can finally take it away. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you so much. These webinars are always so interesting when you can't see or talk to the people. So if you're tuning in, can you just mic check me? Can you hear me okay? Can you see the presentation okay? I want to make sure that you're getting the information that you'd like. So Robert, can you confirm your yeah, okay. Yes, yes, yes. Perfect. Well, hello, everyone. I am so excited to be here. I think I booked this, gosh, like in January. And I am actually, I'm not sure if you can see me while I'm doing the presentation, but I'm actually at a conference this week in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So I am in a hotel room with not the best lighting, but if you can hear me, that's all that really matters. So as Robert said, I spent the first part of my career, almost a decade, working for the Department of Labor, and that's where I really fell in love with data. You see, when you work for government grants such as WIOA, Workforce Initiative Opportunity Act. If you're currently unemployed or if you've been on unemployment in the past 6 months, highly encourage you to look it up, WIOA, because you would be qualified for grants to help you with your job search. They're all based on data. How many people in the community are you helping? Are people getting jobs after they get the certifications or training or whatever that may be? That's everything from, if you're in tech, maybe the PMP certification to make you a little bit more competitive, or if you're in marketing, a digital marketing certification to make you more competitive. I'm actually from Chicago, and so the sector centers that I managed were marketing, tech, manufacturing, and logistics. So I am a little bit more familiar with those industries because as I left the Department of Labor and went into recruitment, I started up my own firm and I primarily work with tech leaders and marketing leaders. You're going to see all kinds of data today, and I'm very well aware of how data works and that it doesn't tell the full picture. And rightfully so, you may be frustrated because this job market has been really frustrating this year and the data doesn't show everything. And that's why I really wanted to do this presentation on the white collar job market, because a lot of this data that we see in companies, all jobs, right? Not necessarily just talking about white collar jobs. And especially if you are at the point where you're maybe an executive or a senior leader in your career, it feels like there's even less and less jobs. So let's go ahead and take a look at that today. So I really want to talk about 2024 hiring and layoff trends. I also want to get into hiring predictions for quarter 4, because hello, if you're on here, it's probably because you want to get hired. And then just some best practice tips for job seekers. I know that you are having incredible speakers come on here and you have access to the replays. So you're going to be getting a lot of job search advice, but want to just share some insights because, as Robert shared, yes, I started off as a resume writer. Then I opened up a recruitment firm because I had so many clients launch startups and they couldn't find the right recruitment agency for them. And then expanded a consulting firm. I'd always been providing consulting services for talent acquisition for corporate clients, but massively expanded it. I'm talking like multi-million-dollar contracts this year, with various organizations to help them with their talent space. If you're on LinkedIn at all, you may hear there's a talent mapping issue, or there's a talent capacity issue where organizations aren't properly forecasting the amount of talent that they're going to need, or that they're getting into some challenges with their capital expenses. And then the easiest way to get the capital that they need for a project or whatever it may be is to do mass layoffs. So it's been a wild ride for the JYC team across all 3 verticals. But that's where this is coming from in terms of those tips and seeing what's really working today. Because some of the advice I was giving just 2 years ago is different because we're in a completely different job market. And I want to make sure we have lots of times to ask questions. So I'm going to give time for that as well. So when you're looking at any type of employment data, basically first quarter, big chunk of layoffs, second quarter, less layoffs. What the market labor is showing right now is that the market has remained resilient despite high interest rates and slowing economic factors like the election, global wars, things of that nature. So the US labor market added 303 jobs in March, and that represented an acceleration in pace in hiring. And the economy added 206 jobs in quarter 3, which I'm sorry, you don't have that on. Oh, no, that's just because I only have layoffs on here. So that was promising. But employment inched just over 4% for the first time in 2 years. And so this summer has been a little wonky. And I think that you, as job seekers, if you're on here, you're probably feeling that as well, right? And so what do I mean by wonky? So the data is showing that things are picking up. If you can see, things are supposed to be picking up. But if you look over the past couple of years, how it goes and it ebbs and flows, ebbs and flows. Let's look at that a little bit further. So across the board, recruiters, career coaches, librarians, job seekers, they've been seeing very little hiring and how bad the job market has been. And so if any of you are familiar with the 401k provider Vanguard, they released some really interesting data. It is back in February of 2024 when they released this, but I think it sheds some insight that Department of Labor, despite how much I appreciated my time working for them, doesn't show. And what it suggests is that demand for US workers overall remains strong, but it's for the greatest of for those making less than $55,000 a year. So if you look at this chart zoomed in here, that gold line and that teal line versus the darker line, it's showing, yeah, there's a hiring demand, but it is for lower income workers. And these workers have supported solid inflation adjustments in terms of wage growth, and it's expected to help the economy deliver slightly above the GDP growth throughout 2024. But it's not what people making, say, six figures really want to hear. The good news is that this summer hiring cuts decreased 23%. So in June, hiring decreased 23% from May. And so if you're really good at reading charts, right here, you can see it went way down in December, way down in July, way down in December again. And so again, we're seeing kind of ebbs and flows depending on the month. So what does that mean? What's to come? So June is typically a low month for job cut announcements because many companies are at the mid-year or the end of their fiscal years. So if any of you are in leadership roles, it's okay, that makes sense, right? The month following fiscal year ends tend to have spike in cuts. And those plans are typically planned and implemented, right? We see that across job cut announcements. So my prediction for quarter four is that there's that we so when I have done this presentation in the past, my prediction was for quarter three, which was that in July we were going to have a spike in layoffs, and we did, right? That's typically what happens. If you follow economic trends, that's what happens. June is that end of the year fiscal year, that mid-year, and then layoffs happen in July. And we saw that, right? We saw that with Tesla and a variety of other organizations doing layoffs. Tesla was one of the big ones that happened in July. But now what's going to happen in quarter four? Well, not to get political, but we've got an election coming up on November 6th. And my prediction is that hiring is going to skyrocket after this election is over, because historical data tells us that it always does. And also the Fed said that they're going to drop the interest rates again, which make companies feel more confident in making decisions. It also anytime political power changes hands, there's always policy changes, and they always try to make a big push in the first 100 days. And so that means organizations are going to be regulated to make certain changes. Right now, if you're in the tech space, you know that a lot of organizations are preparing to see what the rollout is going to be for data privacy surrounding AI, because the United States is significantly behind on implementing policies compared to the UK. And so there's going to be a big push for companies to hire lawyers, a big push for companies to hire audit teams, a big push for companies to hire the technologists to implement these things that are happening. There's also going to be a big push for what's to come in 2025. And so let's take a look a little bit over this a little bit more thoroughly. So over the past decade, job cuts have been primarily announced during the first half of the year. So there's a spike in July. There's always a spike in July, but there's a big spike. This is an kind of an anomaly, but you see that it's typically goes up a little bit here, and then January it goes down, right? So there's big spikes in January, February it goes down, April it goes up. Why? Well, the end of the fiscal year or the start of the mid of the fiscal year, depending on how the companies run. So January we typically see layoffs, and then bonus season we see layoffs again. And so I really don't think that this year is going to be all that much difference going into even quarter one of 2025. And so what does that mean for you all when you're job searching right now? So while the summer was a little bleak, we're turning the corner and we're getting into this post-hiring boom election. If you're on LinkedIn, you might see an uptick in jobs being posted. And people, oops, sorry, somebody just said that the election is November 5th, not 6th. I'm so wrong. Or whenever it is. The election's the beginning of November. So sorry. Yeah, I don't know the exact date. I'm out of town, so I had to do mail in. But either way, post-election, there's always a hiring boom. And so that should be good news. So during my last presentation with a group, when I was touching on a very similar topic, we talked about how at the onset of an election year, boardrooms, are buzzing with strategic anticipation. Oh, my light cut off. All the lights. Okay. Well, I got light behind me, so good thing I'm on Wi-Fi because the lights cut out. Um, and if you were employed at the beginning of the year, you might have been thinking about that too, right? And then something happened. And so what I want for you all to, sorry, that just threw me through a loop. The lights turning the lights turning off. Where were we at? Oh my gosh, I can't ask you guys because you're on mute. Okay, post-election hiring boom. All right, so I give presentations all the time, right? And I was in a presentation with a group of job seekers, and they were talking about how, their layoff was just unexpected. They weren't talking about this. Like they were talking about, all of this anticipation for what's going to come and what policies that they're going to have to implement, and being proactive and trying to get their teams ready. But the companies were like, no, 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 no budget, no money's being allocated until we absolutely know. And so what I think is going to be important as these political climates have ripple effects, you're going to see that in your job search process too. So knowing the correct day of the election is essential. If you wait until the 6th, your vote doesn't count. Yes,
Tegan,
Charlene, I know.
Tegan,
I
it was an
misspoke.
innocent mistake, Charlene. Don't worry about it, Tegan. Keep going.
Yep. So, so, um, there's an organization called the Elevate Network, and they confirmed, they're saying that hiring can experience delays. Decision makers take a more conservative stance, and plans might have to be shelved until the dust settles. And so, if anybody wants to put in the chat, did you experience this? If you were working this year, did you see that where you as a leader potentially were trying to get things done and your company just said, nope, we're not going to do it, we're not going to do it, budget cuts, and then you're frustrated because it's like, but wait, we need to do these things, we're going to get behind, it's going to be a mad dash. This wait it out and see approach, it doesn't make any sense. If we know what's happening in other countries or with anticipation for regulations and things like that, we can start making some informed, wise decisions now. I'm right there with you. But unfortunately, organizations sometimes make other plans. And so for job seekers, it's a very frustrating process, that these delays can turn into prolonged job searches, right? Because if you were employed and you heard those conversations happening, and now you're unemployed, and now you're facing the results of that on the other side of the table, it hasn't felt very good in the job search. And so I want you all to take a moment to recognize that the frustrations that you've been feeling in your job search are a little out of your control. And I don't know about you, but I'm super type A. And that doesn't feel very good to not feel in control of something that impacts my family, my ability to provide stability for my home. And so I want to make sure that you all feel confident going into quarter 4 and really taking ownership of your job search. So I'm going to throw a little bit more data at you. And then I want to get into the nitty gritty of what you can do to really stand out over the next couple of months, to land this job, hopefully before the end of the year, but if not, definitely into quarter 1. So, where will the jobs be? There's currently 8.1 around million jobs available in the United States, and 6 million of them can be found in healthcare, education, retail, warehousing, wholesale, transportation, utilities, food services, accommodations, manufacturing, and construction. But the remaining 2 million jobs are in industries that LinkedIn users are typically interested in. Business and professional services like IT and marketing, like those are my specialties, and financial services and real estate. And so if you are in professional and business services or financial and real estate, it's still going to be competitive. So I want you to take a look at the screen and think, are there any other industries that I might be interested in? Let's say you're a cloud engineer, and maybe instead of wanting to work for one of the FANG companies or main companies, maybe you say, maybe there's an opportunity in healthcare instead. Or maybe I look into spreading services a little bit in terms of where. So I was recently working with a marketing executive who had been working on SaaS product for years, and she ended up converting over to the construction industry. And it is difficult to change industries. There's definitely challenges there when you do decide to pivot industries. Any of you have ever pivoted industries before and haven't stayed narrow in an industry can know that it's not the easiest thing to do, but it's absolutely possible. And if you're sitting there only targeting industries that you've ever worked in, know that there are opportunities in other industries. So when you're looking at your job search, here's where I'm going to talk more and not rely on the slides so much. Is the number one thing that I see for my clients is refining your brand. Whether you know it or not, you have a brand. And Andrea, we'll talk about that in a second. Whether you know it or not, you have a brand. And so if you're experiencing challenges getting into a different industry, maybe your brand only talks about being in that one vertical, right? And so maybe you need to widen your brand a little bit with who you network with, how you articulate yourself, right? So if any of you go on my LinkedIn profile, you might not see it be screamed resume writer, resume writer, resume writer. And that's because I own a resume writing firm and I do write resumes, and I have a whole entire team of resume writers who work for my company. But I'm slightly pivoting. So if you would have looked 15 years ago, it would have screamed resume writer. As I've evolved and opened up different verticals of my organization, of my portfolio company, you'll see I have my branding be a little bit different, and I'm targeting more organizations. But all of my content that I post is to help job seekers. And when you look at someone like my brand, it's not helpful for you because you're thinking, okay, so she works with a lot of corporate clients, but all of her posts are to job seekers. Well, if you're a job seeker, you want to have it be crystal clear who you are, what services you provide, and what's out there. The nature of the work that I do is highly confidential. A lot of my clients, I'm working on projects that are under NDA. And with the nature of how my business works, they're all interconnected. And so when you're looking at refining your brand, I encourage you to come up with pillars. So think about who you are, what your values are. Think about what title you're targeting, what industry you're targeting. If you're not sure what comes next for you, where you're like, hey, my profession is obsolete now, I need to pivot. Send me a LinkedIn DM asking for some guidebooks. They're free. My team will send them to you, or I can get them to Robert to send out as an attachment. But I have a career clarity guide that can kind of walk you through who are your values. Do a SWOT analysis on yourself. What are your strengths, weaknesses? Those are internal. And what are your opportunities and threats? Those are external. And so think about what are the internal and external influences that you want to define your brand. Then you come down to that's like high level. Who am I? Who do I want the market to know me as? Then come up with content pillars. For me, that might be job search strategy, LinkedIn optimization, resume writing, professional branding, right? For you, that might be somebody throw your title in the chat that you're targeting, and I'll give an example specifically for you. So a brand experience designer for a web and print. So brand experience designer. So if I understand that title correctly, is that doing like trade shows, event marketing manager? Okay, so let's say you're doing things where you're creating brands and events. Think like trade shows, right? Like going to a conference and all the companies are showing their latest and greatest in tech. Okay, so maybe your brand then, your content pillars is going to be talking about experiential design. And so how not just to have something be how to create an experience versus just have a product. And then so maybe you're going to be talking about some of those nuanced things. And then maybe you'll talk about technology innovations. There's some really cool like goggles where people could experience it. Or maybe there's like maybe you're working for like a pharma company and there's some type of hologram of like how this thing works, where that's part of what makes it experiential, but that's also the innovations in technology that are driving this. And then maybe you're also going to talk about cost. So how do you create brand experiences that can be replicated for other purposes to save on costs? And where do you want to spend more money? And then where do you want to reel back budgets? Finding that balance. So somebody else is a project manager. So Lori, as a project manager, I'm not sure if you're a technology product manager, if you're a construction project manager, what kind of like industry you're in. But let's say you're a technology project manager and your content pillars might be so when I think of project managers, like they herd cats, right? Project managers are there to keep the ship moving forward. So maybe one of your content pillars might be project management best practices, really talking about that project life cycle. And so maybe one day you're talking about how to assess and mitigate risk. And maybe you go on Canva like I use for this presentation and you look and see what's already made, or maybe you make something yourself, or maybe you give credit from somebody else that's not copywritten, but it's out there from maybe like an event you went to or something like that. And you explain what that looks like. So maybe project management best practices is one of your pillars. And then something else that's really important in project management outside of like the project lifecycle best practices is stakeholder engagement. So as you're herding all these cats, how do you get everybody to play nice in the sandbox? Well, if one person gets behind, it can sometimes make somebody else behind and it can extend the budget and da 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 da. So maybe you share non-confidential examples and what you did in those situations and what you learned from it. And then maybe one of the other content pillars is so you've got like best practices, you've got stakeholder engagement, and then maybe I always like to do three so you can mix it up a little bit. Maybe you talk about innovations in your industry. So maybe you're industry agnostic and you're thinking about changing from one industry to a next. Maybe you find interesting articles as you're leveling up your professional development. Sharing other content creators or publishers work and sharing how you feel about it is a great way to show your thought leadership. And so let's say you're using LinkedIn as a primary tool to network yourself. Regardless of what role you have, you can talk about specific things, because when you're on your job search, if you're only applying online, the the ROI that you're going to get is low, because you're going to be competing against thousands of other applicants, especially in the age of AI, where organizations are allowing people to pay them to mass email out their resume, even if they're not a good fit. So, like as a recruiter, um, I mean, 90% of the people apply aren't even close to qualified. And so that 10%, it really makes it easy to just look at them and say, all right, like what are the 7 to 10 that I'm moving forward? And some it's really different just based on what the hiring manager wants. Maybe they've got the right industry background, maybe they have a referral, maybe they really have some type of standout experience that's going to solve a pain point that we really need right now. And so um, if I get that application, great. But chances are, before I even posted that role, I was pipelining. So I'm looking on LinkedIn for the type of talent that my hiring leader is looking for. I'm already starting to put feelers out to people who are like an ideal fit based on what they're looking for. And I've got people internally who are giving referrals in for this. And so when you're already up against a lot when you're applying online, and I'm sure there's been plenty of past speakers who have talked about that. But when I go on LinkedIn and I'm pipelining and I'm looking for talent, um, your brand is going to trigger all kinds of keywords. If anybody's in marketing, you know about SEO, or if anybody's in sales, you know in the CRM that you're going to be targeting people of certain titles at certain industries and certain locations. That's the same way recruiters find talent. Um, so when you're working on your brand, it's not only going to be your LinkedIn profile, where I'm definitely encouraging you to maybe make a post twice a week, maybe 3 times a week, um, to elevate how people are going to perceive you digitally. But if you don't feel comfortable with that, at least engaging in other people's content that's relative to your industry, because it's going to help the right people find you. Um, and then of course there's the resume. Your resume is going to be important. Your resume and your LinkedIn profile shouldn't be duplicates. They're sisters. And so your resume is going to be your past experience on paper. It should very clearly show what your overarching scope was and how you delivered value. So, what results? What were your KPIs and how did you deliver against them? And why did that matter for the company? I'm not going to get too much into resume writing, but that's part of your brand. You want your brand across different verticals to be consistent. So your resume is going to be a historical context of your experience. Your LinkedIn is a social media site. So yes, there is a virtual resume piece to it, but you also want there to be a social piece to it, which brings me to activating your network. On LinkedIn, you can look up who you're connected with. Go to privacy and settings, go to data, get a copy of your data, and then only select connections. And it's going to be a zipped Excel file where it's going to show every single name of the connection, the date that you connected with them, where they're working, their current company, their phone number and email if they make that public. And so that's a great way to go back and think, because you're already thinking about the people who know, like, and love you the most. Those are like tier one connections. If they could have helped you get a job, they would have gotten you a job by now. If you're still in the hiring process and the people who you know, like, and love the most haven't been able to give you an in at their company, now it's time to expand that. Maybe go back to those people and ask them, once you've refined your brand and have a little bit more clarity on what comes next for you, hey, can you make an introduction? Or maybe when you're done creating your target company list, which if you don't have a target company list, highly recommend, create a target company list and look, does anybody currently work at those companies that I might be a second connection to, or a first connection to that I didn't even realize somebody went out to. And if you don't have any connections, that's fine. Go to that company's page, look and see who people who have titles that you're interested in. Hey, Tegan, I saw that you previously worked for this company. And although you're no longer there, was wondering if you would be open to sharing a little bit more of whatever question you have. You don't want to reach out to people and ask them for a job. You want to know a little bit more about the industry. Like, was there a specific reason why you left that industry, or would you mind sharing how did you pivot from one industry to the next industry? Whatever is going to help you learn a little bit more about them, and selfishly learn a little bit more about what your situation is too. I do have a 4-step framework, and we're getting close to time where I want to open it up for questions. So if anybody has any challenges with feeling like activating your network, just shoot me a DM on LinkedIn asking for the LinkedIn guidebook. Let's say you're like, hey, I'm not sure what comes next for me. Ask me for the clarity guidebook. If you're saying, hey, I'm not sure how to use LinkedIn, ask me for the LinkedIn guidebook. If you're saying, hey, I don't know how to proactively use LinkedIn and activate my network and grow my network, ask me for the advanced guidebook. I have the person who just commented, I've got them in a Google. So you'll be able to access them. I won't be able to send them as an attachment. It'll be a link, and you'll be able to have a copy of them. And lastly, before we kick things over to questions, I want you to be an A-player job seeker. This might be offensive to some of you, but if you've ever been a hiring manager, you know that talent teams say that there's A players, B players, and C players. And during performance evaluations, those people who are rated exceptional, above average, those hypos, those are A players. The people who meet expectations are B players. And the people who have room for improvement are C players. And yes, Carol, I can give them to Robert. So when you're at work, you know what it takes to be an A player. It's not just do the job, right? Some of you may have even been incredibly offended during performance evaluations. If you've never been on an executive team, there has to be a bell curve, and leadership has to advocate for you to get and exceeds expectations. And sometimes in a department, let's say like the IT team, for example, if there's thousands of people, everybody can't be exceeds expectations. There can only be a few. And so how do you get to be and exceeds expectations when there's so much more to it than just doing your job? Well, it's the same thing in the job search. You have to go that extra 10% that other people aren't going. You have to have the right network advocating for you on the inside. You have to have enough clout to say, like, this person provides above and beyond value for for the organization, they deserve this extra bit. And so there's a couple of things that come to mind, like do more than just applying online. Try to get those referrals. Doing obsessive amount of research on the company you're applying to. That comes in at that target company list. That comes in when you're doing your networking. Um, that's little things like sending thank you notes or thank you note addendums or creating portfolios for yourself. Or if you're interested in more than just publicly held companies and are looking to get into the private sector with like startups and scale ups, that might be creating a pitch deck and pitching an executive team why they should create a new role for you. There's lots of really creative ways to become that quote unquote A player job seeker. And I want to open the floor up to questions at that time to help you become that. So, hello. Oh, I can see myself again. Robert, welcome back.
So, so
All right.
yeah, this is great. So, folks, let's give Tegan a big virtual round of applause, and we have time for about 10 minutes of questions. And Tegan, you kind of addressed a few of them as you went.
Okay.
Tegan, do you want me to read them to you, or do you want to read them aloud? How do you want to handle the questions?
That would be great if you could read them, because
Sure.
then I
Yeah.
won't feel bad if I miss one. But if we miss one, just send me a LinkedIn message and I'm happy to help.
So Tammy asks, can you talk more about the mismatch of job seekers and job postings that you mentioned?
Okay, so with the clients that I work with, they're more white collar job seekers. And right now we're seeing an influx and blue collar workers. So one of my clients, for example, they're developers, and there is a massive need for data centers with the influx in AI. And Asia, various countries in Asia have really strong restrictions there. So there's a lot of people coming from other parts of the world that the United States is typically dependent on and trying to get us to house their data centers. Long story short, we don't have enough master electricians to do the work, but that's a more blue collar job than white collar job. And so if you're in a white collar job, like say marketing, it's oversaturated. Even cloud software development, these roles that they thought that they were untouchable, it's oversaturated. And so that's what I mean by there's kind of a mismatch. Um, there's lots of fast food places hiring, but people who have been laid off from six-figure jobs typically don't want to be a cashier at a restaurant or a greeter at a department store. And when I ran AARP's Back to Work 50 Plus grant, a lot of people who were making well into $350,000 a year salaries, like more director level executives. Many of them resorted to going to department stores after they had an extended job search and just needed some kind of income. And some of them were so damn frustrated because they couldn't even get a job working at a department store because they were overqualified. And so that's what I mean by the mismatch of jobs.
So Kimberly asks, when we see news about unemployment rates versus job openings, what actually counts as a job opening? For instance, big tech will post a SaaS position in basically every state, but it's not actually 50 plus openings. There's just one position. So does that skew the statistics?
Yeah, so I was never on the data collection side when I worked for the Department of Labor. I was just an end user of that data. So I don't know the methodology behind it. However, every organization, so not every organization, certain companies of a certain size are regulated by the federal government to submit certain types of data. Now, it's if they have one position, but it's open in all 50 states, that would count as one. But what we're seeing a lot of is fake jobs being posted. or the same job being reposted multiple times. And that's been really frustrating for my clients. I don't know if any of you have experienced that. But what's been happening a lot is jobs are then getting put on hold, or maybe they thought that they were going to fill it and then the person backed out, or I mean, there's so many different factors of why a job would be reposted over and over again. When I was in aviation recruiting, there were certain roles that we just constantly needed on rinse and repeat because a client always needed that type of talent. So I always had a job ad about a certain type of role for pipelining, not because it was a fake role, but because I was so let's say like warehouses, they're always going to need forklift drivers, you know? And so I at any given time would have 75 companies needing forklift drivers. And so that's where it can kind of get messy with the data. But what's really difficult too is a lot of these startup companies don't have to send in those types of reports. So some jobs are missing, some jobs are over calculated, and and it's just hard to have 100% accurate data, but it is at least some type of indicator to go off of, and knowing that it's been a really rough job market.
Christine asks a follow-up. What are an example or more of an understanding of the fake jobs that are being posted? You had mentioned fake jobs.
Yeah, so there's a lot of buzz about this, about companies not doing the ethical thing. There was actually just an executive recruitment firm outed for setting up a fake company to get market intelligence on their competitors. And so what happened during the pandemic when us recruiters, we're the first to go when there's hiring freezes because nobody's hiring. So what a lot of agencies did is became market intelligent hubs where they would do like my brother-in-law, he's an economist, for example, and he does employment wages. So what a lot of recruitment firms try to do is get on that piece of the pie, because the federal government, EEOC, and if you do any business with a federal institution, you're required to have certain things followed. And so market intelligence became huge for agencies. And so what they'll do at some recruitment agencies, one, they have quotas on how many people that they need to talk to for a day. So a lot of times job seekers will feel like, oh, a recruiter's calling me and they want to know more about what I'm interested in. They set me up for an interview. But what that job seeker didn't realize, it's an interview to become a candidate for that agency to then use you in the future, not an actual job. Or and what this agency just got outed for literally yesterday, and they've denied it, but it's out there, is that they were reaching out to top talent at banks, talking about jobs at Goldman Sachs and things of that nature, to try to get confidential information on competitors when it came to what their salary is, as well as profit and loss statements. And so we'll find out if that's true or not. But market intelligence has become a booming industry for recruitment agencies to be able to better advise their clients on the talent space. And so I can give you an example. I've got a really good friend who's an engineering director at Google, who works for in their government vertical. And let's say he makes $100,000 hypothetically during COVID, and there was all this turnover in tech. Some of his team members left to go for, better opportunities. And these new people came in and they were making $150,000. And his company said, nope, you're not going to make more than $100,000. But people under him were making $150,000. That's a great way to make some people really upset. And so then more people left, and it was, all of this. Well, there was a great reshuffling. And now those people making 150, they're not getting promotions at all, or they can leave. And many of them, their jobs were eliminated because the team's budget can't sustain that inflated salary. And so market intelligence firms will reach out to talent in the marketplace to interview them to get that type of data to then sell to the market. And so when it comes to fake jobs, I have never posted a job that hasn't existed, but I have met multiple people who have had to for their company, whether that be an internal company or an agency. And so how can you tell if it's real or not? You can ask questions like, well, why is this position open? How quickly are you looking to hire? The best bet is knowing someone in the company who can tell you if it's legit or not. But even then, sometimes as people are going through the hiring process, hiring managers change their minds. If you've ever been on the hiring team and you start the interview process, it's kind of like house hunting, right? You think, all right, I need 2 bedrooms and 1 bath. And then you go in and you're like, no, I need 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. And I, want a loft too. The same thing happens in hiring, especially if it's for, well, really at any level, not just at middle management hiring. It's at any level when you can see what's happening in the market, you it's just natural for people to say, well, what else? And as a recruiter, it's really frustrating because you've got really great talent right here and they're like, we'll see what else is out there. So when it comes to fake jobs, it's a potential that it can happen. Ask smart questions, be talking to the right people to try to see if it's worth it, and understands that if an agency recruiter is calling you, which is different than an internal recruiter who works for the specific company that you're looking to be employed at, if an agency recruiter is calling you, they may or may not have a role specifically for you. They might be pipelining, and it's not bad to be in a recruiter's pipeline. That means they frequently hire for your type of talent and want to network with you to find out what you're interested in. So should a job come up, they already have that relationship with you and can know what your goals were to make sure it's a good fit for you. So don't completely rule that out.
We'll take 1 or 2 more questions. Kim asks, when recruiters look at a candidate on LinkedIn, does the recruiter see anything on their little special recruiter dashboard that says something like likelihood of response?
Yes. Okay. So, let me, where is my thingamabob? Right here, guidebooks. LinkedIn optimization, LinkedIn advanced. Sorry guys, I'm going behind the scenes. I'm going to show you what LinkedIn Recruiter looks like because I always get this question and I can't pull up anything that like I'm working on confidentially right now, but I can show you a screenshot. So these are the guidebooks that I was telling you all about. If you want them. Wait, is this the right one? Let me see if this screenshot is in here. I'm pretty sure it's in this guidebook, and if not, I can try to find it for you. Okay, so LinkedIn Recruiter. Let me see if I can zoom in on this a little bit. So in LinkedIn Recruiter, this is what it looks like behind the scenes. You can you put in a project, and then you can filter by title, location, skills, education, all of that. And then it will say, like, has this person engaged in this company? Do they have any connections? Have they applied in the past? And so that's what it looks like to put a project in. But then this is what it looks like to put the project in. This is what it looks like when you're searching for a project. And then this is what it looks like when you actually click on the person's name. So it doesn't show you the full profile. You actually have to click on this button to see the public profile, and it will show you if anybody else in your company has recently viewed their profile as well. And if anybody in the same company, if they're using the LinkedIn recruiter tool to put notes and tags in and stuff like this, it'll be over here. So like as a recruiter, I've had to blacklist people before, had to reject someone and they sent a death threat. Yep, you're on the do not hire list, 100% for sure. I do not want to scare you by talking about being blacklisted. It has to be egregious offenses for you to get blacklisted. And sometimes even when somebody was blacklisted, like for not passing a drug screening, have had that happen so many times in industries that require that. It's do not hire for 6 months with a date, and then that note gets deleted. And it's like, or there's still a note on there that says, hey, triple check they can pass a drug test this time. So, all right, what else we got?
Well, Tegan, let's do one more question because we are at 3 o'clock Eastern. But Bill wants to know, and I'm sure you want to get back to your conference, okay? But Bill wants to know, do you see a difference from companies in terms of backfilling vacant roles versus creating new positions? And along with what you have been talking about, any further insight on what does it take for a company to create a new position?
Oh, I love that question. I don't have enough time to answer that, but my husband, before he came to work at my firm and we launched the consulting side of it, recorded a podcast episode on what it takes to um open up a requisition. And so, first the hiring manager has to get approval of the business case, then a job role gets created with like KPIs for performance. Then it goes to the HR side of things where an external facing job description gets posted, it gets posted. Like there's a whole bunch into it. So if you want to look under, oops, I think I sent that. Okay. No, I sent it to everybody. Okay. So if you want to look at that, it's podcast number 1. There's a couple of them on there, like if you're interested, but that specifically talks about insider, what all goes into that and why working with recruiters, because I've talked a lot about networking today. Recruiters aren't going to give you the time of the day most of the time. But in that episode, we talk about how to get on recruiters' radars and why it's so difficult to get in their network and why doing workarounds from the recruiters are beneficial, but why you still need to work with them, because recruiters have some fantastic insights and can really help you prepare to be successful on the role. And then as far as that was a 2-pronged question. So what was the first part of it?
So what are you seeing in terms of, I'm trying to do this from memory. What do you see in terms of backfilling positions versus creating new ones?
Yeah. So what I'm seeing a lot on that is that companies aren't doing a lot of backfilling. What they're doing is it's finally they have an opportunity to create a role that's better suited for the needs of the current organization. AKA, they're going to write a role where this person who used to have 1 job function is now going to be doing 3. To be honest, that's what I'm seeing. Organizations are looking for people to do a lot less. And so as they've had to do layoffs, and we saw this in 2008, I'm not like, that's when I started working with the government in 2009. We saw this during that recession. Organizations are making one person do more. And so some companies are backfilling roles, but I have so many clients who's having to do all of these extra jobs because they're on a hiring freeze. They're not allowing people to backfill roles even once they have them. They're on a wait. So it really is different from one company to the other. But what I see a lot of companies doing, and this isn't a bad thing, is they are asking for jobs to be rewritten and making the roles to be more in line with what the organization needs today. And sometimes that is doing a little bit more, sometimes that's incorporating AI into the role or incorporating, new technologies. Companies, a lot of times, especially if they're more established organizations and they got a whole lot more red tape going on, they have to get all the job descriptions approved by legal, and there's a whole entire process that takes forever to get the job descriptions changed. So as job seekers, it's frustrating because we feel like a bait and switch a lot of the time, where we see a job and we think we're a perfect fit because of the job description. Then we get on the call and it's totally different. We want companies to be updating their job descriptions and having them be accurate for what they're looking for today. So Robert, there's the link to the Google Drive for all of you 58 people who are still on. There's access to some guidebooks to help you throughout your job search. And of course, if anybody's watching this on replay, you can get it from Robert. Or if anybody has any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I am at a conference until Wednesday evening, so it might be this weekend that I get around to being able to respond. I will eventually respond. It's just kind of a little bit of a busy week, but I'm so happy to be here with you all today. And I really hope that you all do send me a connection request. I will accept it. I will support you. If you see someone in my network that you would like an introduction to, or have some questions on any companies or things like that, I'm a firm believer that good people know good people. And while it's a really big ask, hey Tegan, can you connect me with the Bezoses? I heard you know them. No, I'm not going to do that. But if you have a question about a particular division within Amazon or AWS, that's more appropriate. So and not only will I lovingly help you on asking more effective questions, I will also do my best to make sure that I can support you in any way that I can. So Robert, thank you so much for having me today. Have me back anytime. To the friends of the library, thank you for hosting this, because the community needs this. I'm a service provider and I volunteer as much as I can to provide free services to job seekers, because a lot of us aren't in positions where we can pay exorbitant amount of money to get access to this type of intel, or it can be incredibly overwhelming to try to start from scratch and you've got to build relationships before you can ask the hard questions. Coming to workshops like this, that allows you to ask the right question, ask the hard questions, ask the questions that wouldn't be appropriate to ask other people. So please make sure when you have opportunities to join things like that, like this, ask them. Don't be embarrassed if you're like, oh no, it's inappropriate. Now's the time to ask it. Because you don't have to build the relationship. We're already here to help.
Tegan, excellent job. Definitely an A+ presentation. Okay. We will definitely be in touch in the future. Maybe we'll do this again in 6 to 12 months. Folks, look for an email from me later today with a link to this recording, as well as a link to Tegan's LinkedIn account and the Google Drive to the guidebooks. So thank you all so
Please do not share the link with anybody else. You can tell people, they can specifically request them from me, but please don't give it out to everybody, because well, there's a legalese in there, but also I do want to meet the people that I am helping selfishly.
Absolutely. Now that makes a lot of sense. Please connect with Tegan on LinkedIn as well. And folks, next Monday at 2 o'clock Eastern, we'll be with Mark Anthony Dyson. And he'll be talking about, speaking of fake jobs, he'll be talking about 10 essential ways to avoid job scams and conduct a productive modern job search. So that'll be next Monday at 2 o'clock. So thank you all so much. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day. Thanks again, Tegan.
Hi, everyone. Good luck with your job search.
Thank you.